at an event called Rock Island that I hosted. It was a lot of fun, and it was great to see him do his thing once again with Dokken. He also has a instrumental solo record out called Seamless. Joining us now for a few is George Lynch. Hey, George, how are you, man?
Hey, Eddie. I'm good.
Thanks for the time. Thanks for the time.
Posting. I want to thank you for posting that too. That was pretty awesome. And so I was going through all the responses, and comments. And the number one thing, it was actually really educational for me because I didn't realize that I turned my back to the audience a lot while I'm on stage. And after watching that video and reading all the comments, I realized I got to stop doing that.
Oh, you mean when I shot the video, the photo? You guys had me out to shoot that photo, and then the video I took of you guys playing at Rock Island. When I saw you at that Dallas guitar show, you had done that too, and a few people had commented about it. And I remember asking you about it, and you said that's just you kind of getting into a zone and grooving with the drummer, and you don't realize you're actually doing it. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it absolutely is. There's I call sweet spots. There's places on particular stages, and when you're getting acclimated when you walk out there, that tend to be a place where you can hear everything better. So I want to hear a nice. As a musician, when I go on stage, ultimately, and I think most of us feel this way, we don't want to just hear ourselves. And I'm standing in front of a roaring stack of amplifiers. I really just don't want to hear that. I want to hear it like the audience hears it. I want to hear it like a record. I want to hear a nice mix of bass and drums supporting the guitar and the vocals in there, so we all know where we're at and we're playing together as a band. That's really important to me, to feel the groove and sense of where we're going and so forth. So my favorite spot is literally to be anywhere but in front of my rig. And that's why sometimes I'll turn my cabinets back around, or I'll do what Massa does. I'll put plexiglass in front, or I'll even put packing blankets over, or anything, just to kind of dim it down a little bit so that I can hear the rest of the band. And if I can't do that, for instance, when I walk out on stage and I do the Dokken performance things, the guesting things that I've been doing, I'm just kind of walking out there cold. So what I'll do is I'll sort of find that spot which is friendly to me, because I'm not singing, so I don't have to worry about being on a mic. And I make that my priority, not a performer, which is probably wrong, because that's the whole point I'm there, is to be seen, and people want to see me play and whatever, and be, having some back and forth with the audience, which I try to do too, but I don't do as much as I should. And at this late stage in the game of my career, after watching your video, it really hit home about how bad I am with that, and reading the comments, but in my defense, I will say that I think a little bit of it had to do with the fact that I was hamming it up for you because you were filming me, and that's how I am.
Well, the thing I was going to ask you, but the thing I was going to, not to overthink this, but here's the other thing I was thinking, like, so in the Dokken stuff that you're doing now, you're coming out at the end, you're playing 3, 4, or 5 songs, whatever. You're not out there the whole time. When I saw you play at the Dallas guitar thing a year ago, and you were sort of more grooving with the drummer, you had just come out and done a few songs, and it was a guitar clinic sort of thing. I would imagine you weren't always like that, because when you were a full-time member of Dokken, or whatever band you're performing with as a full-time member, you would have that all dialed in your monitors for sound check, right?
Right.
So this is really more a byproduct of jumping out into, like, being a part of things instead of being part of it from the beginning, where you would have that all set up, I would think.
The other thing, well, you're partly right, and here's the thing. I mean, I place a lot more weight on my playing and my tone, rather than going out there and doing somersaults and backflips and
right.
being a performer. I mean, I used to put a lot more weight on the performance than the playing, and over the decades, I've, after listening to board tapes and watching videos and things like that, and watching them critically, I'm like, that may look good, but it does not sound good. And I'm a guitar player first and foremost, I like to think, so that's what I got to focus on, and not out there doing windmills. And that might have been the wrong choice, actually, because I think I got a lot further with just pretending I knew what I was doing rather than really know what I was doing. But back in the 80s, we would be very serious about our posing, and what we were wearing and how we were looking. And I get that. You hit a note and you telegraph it, and it really amplifies it, and it means a lot. But I think I think that makes a lot more sense when you're 20s, your 30s, and your 40s. But when you're in your 60s, going your 70s, I don't know if all that works as well. It's not. It seems a little disingenuous.
Well, George, this is a super obvious question, but I actually don't know the answer to this, and I've known you for a very long time and been a fan for a very long time, and you referenced how long you've been doing this as a professional musician, but who was your guy when you first picked up a guitar that inspired you to do so? Because that influence can be from a playing standpoint, but also a performance standpoint. I mean, there's many guys like Yngwie told me seeing Hendrix set the guitar on fire made him want to be a performer. So what when you were a kid, who were your guys? Like, who did you see or hear that made you want to both perform and play?
Hey, Eddie, I'm getting every other word, if even that. So, but I think what you're asking me is, was there an inspirational point watching somebody,
yes,
perform that really, lit my fire? And
yes,
if that's what I was hearing, there has been a lot of those moments in my life, peppered throughout my, my guitar playing years, from when I was just a little kid to now, and they continue to happen. But I think one of the most seminal moments was when I saw ZZ Top's Tres Hombres tour. I believe that was 73-ish. Just blew my fucking mind out of the water. I mean, that lasted with me my whole life. I mean, I was like, okay, that's what's possible. It was so powerful. It was like seeing Zeppelin for the first time, or Deep Purple, or Sabbath. It was just this monolithic, thing that just permeates your whole being. It was a spiritual experience, really. I'd never seen anything or felt anything like that before. And I thought, okay, that is a whole other dimension. That's what I need to achieve. And, then we end up following the footsteps of these guys, and, the guys that we grew up with and worshipped. And we become them, but less than them, And I think that's the way it's supposed to be.
Have you ever had a conversation with Billy? Have you ever had a conversation with Billy Gibbons about that?
Yes, but Billy came to my house many years ago with a friend photographer, and we took a trip out to an amp company out in the desert here in Southern California, Mojave Amps. And we spent the whole day together. It snowed in the desert that day. We had beers. We had Mexican food. Mostly he told stories, which were awesome. And, tried some equipment, played together. It was just a great day. And, of course, I've met, talked to him many other times, and I invariably bring that up, but he doesn't care. And it's just, it only means something to me. It can't mean anything to him. He's just living his life and doing what he's doing. It's not that he doesn't care. It's just that, when somebody comes up to me and wants my autograph and tells me, how much I mean to them, I appreciate that. But there's not really any way I can really feel what they're feeling. I kind of understand it. But what can you say, And I felt that same way when I've met people that I admire, like, for instance, Jeff Beck, who, is, I grew up with his records, spending my lawn mowing money, walking 6 miles to the record store and then putting it on, wearing it out and playing to it, pretending I was Jeff Beck, when I was a kid. And then and I met the guy, and I was just speechless, and I was kicking myself because I couldn't think of what to ask him until afterwards, But the couple of times that I met him, he was very, very sweet, but I could tell it was just a little bit painful and uncomfortable because I didn't want to be that guy, oh, you mean so much to me, and what amps were you using on this record and this performance? And there's really nothing to say. It's just you love them, you appreciate them, and that's it. And you acknowledge them. That's all you can do.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, how's this whole thing been for you? The first time I saw you do this Dokken guest spot thing was in Florida last week. How has the whole experience of coming out at the end with Don been for you? It seems like you guys are in a good place and enjoying each other's company. Has it been fun for you? Do you enjoy doing it?
It has been actually more than I would have thought. I would have thought there, because Don and I had animosity, towards each other on a couple of different levels over the decades, and it's kind of a weird thing when you think about it. And sometimes it is uncomfortable for me because when I show up, I have to sit there, and of course they're playing the songs that I wrote, and guitar player John is a wonderful guy. We're friends, but they're doing all my whole thing. And then I walk out. But I think it comes down to, look, we're entertainers, and if I'm going to spend my time crying about anything, then I'm just going to hurt myself and the fans, and that doesn't do anybody any good. And so I try to keep positive about the whole experience, and it has been actually good for everybody. The fans love it. I love doing it because the easiest thing I can do is play songs, play Dokken songs, songs that are I helped writing 35, 40 years ago that I can play in my sleep with one arm tied behind my back and go out and enjoy it, and not have to work that hard, and just really enjoy what I'm doing, enjoy the moment. And it's the path of least resistance. A lot of these other projects I do, they're not as easy of a sell. When I'm doing a KXM project or whatever it is, I sometimes have to work at it a little bit. Well, do have to work at it a bit harder, kind of think, what is this supposed to be? How am I supposed to write? How am I supposed to look? How am I supposed to sell this? With Dokken, I don't have any of those issues or concerns because all the work's been done. We've already established what we are, and I know what to do. So it's really, like I said, the path of least resistance sometimes is the right one.
Why do you only why do this versus the full blown set? Like you said, John does the bulk of it, and then you come out and do the end. What is it, a money thing? Is it better that you guys stay a little further apart and don't do the whole set together because of past history? Like, why not just go out and play guitar for the whole show since it's your material anyway?
Well, that's probably an economic issue. On Don's side, Don owns the name and the band, and it works for me on all levels at this point, and it obviously works for Don. So if it's not broken, why fix it? And I don't know. I'd just be speculating that he's concerned maybe that something could pop up if he gets in bed with me, and then he doesn't have what he's built over all these years. So there's that, and maybe. Financially, it would be not as, not as of a positive outcome for him. I'm not sure. We haven't talked about it, but what we're doing now works. Obviously, what you just brought up is something that everybody's thinking about, but hey, it's not up for me to decide. But I certainly would. I feel like that would probably make sense. I could see that making sense. I'm already there. Why not just go out and finish playing the rest of the songs that they're part of my legacy. So I people would like that. But there's a lot of different ways to think about that. So there's what we do as a business, and I'm not ashamed of that. I don't think it's a bad thing to talk about the business side of music. It doesn't take away from the art. It doesn't take away from the creative part of it. Those are two different sides of the same coin. We all need to make a living, but you have to have that balance of appreciating and producing this music that you love and that people like and enjoy. At the same time, it has to make sense financially. So I'm not sure which one that is why we're not back together on a more complete basis where I'm out there playing the whole set. But I've got a feeling it's probably financial.
Well, yeah, and you're being honest. I talk about it all the time. It's called the music business, and there's nothing wrong with that. Two other quick things on Dokken, and then I want to talk to you about your solo record. Have you and Don worked on or talked about potentially making? I know you did, and you guys all did a reunion song a few years ago or two. Have you talked about, or since you are together a little bit now, even writing and working on anything new as far as new recordings?
We have, and the opportunity has come up every few years, and we've had offers, and they're good offers. But it's tricky at this point in all our careers when we're all out, kind of established ourselves on other paths, to bring us all together. And even though the offers are good, it's not enough to make us all stop what we're doing in our tracks and reroute our careers to do that. So it's just, every time it comes up, we always run into these obstacles. They're not anybody's fault in particular, but it just seems like an impossibility. I'm even running into that a little bit with KXM now. Not to skip subjects, but and we're on Dokken, but I just wanted to make a parallel point that even with KXM, you've got Ray Luzier from Korn, and you've got Doug Pinnick, and all the records that he does, projects that he's got going, and of course King X. And then my thing, I'm kind of in all different areas too. So between the three of us, it was very, very hard for us to get, almost impossibility for us to ever do that first record. I mean, it was a miracle we pulled that off. We literally had like 8 days to do an album or something. It was crazy, and we didn't have any extra days. We had to come back a month later and write a couple more songs just on a weekend, record. And then we managed to do 2 more records. So we did 3 records. Now we're looking at a 4th record, which I don't know if it's ever going to happen because, Korn is just, they work nonstop and they're huge, and we can't really compete with that. And we're probably never going to tour, as far as I can tell. And Doug's doing a million things. I'm doing a million things. So if it's that difficult for even KXM to do a deal, which we've got offers on the table, at any time we can do a record. Imagine how much harder it is for Dokken.
Yeah, I know you've wanted to do KXM live shows for a long time, and I would love to see KXM live, as a lot of people would love to, but because it just sounds like it'd be so awesome to be heard live. But that's obviously been a challenge. And, you mentioned Ray. I know Korn has another record coming, and everybody's in a million directions, but it would be great if you could even just get a run of 3-5 dates in at some point with that. Yeah,
but the work to prepare for 3 to 5 dates is the same as to prepare for a year-long tour.
Right.
And that's the problem. I mean, it's expensive to prep for a tour. You got to hire a crew and an agent and a manager and a front of house guy, and you've got to learn songs that you wrote 10 years ago that you haven't played. And they're not all just they're not easy compositions. Most of them, they're
sure
a little tricky. So. And I personally, if you put a gun to my head and told me to play a KXM song without me listening to it, I wouldn't be able to. You'd have to shoot me. So I'd have some homework to do. And to play it convincingly and to be a tight band, I mean, after, you go see Korn, which is incredible. You go see King X, one of my favorite bands on the whole planet, everybody's favorite band. Expectations are going to be high. You don't want to disappoint people yourself, so you want to be really prepared. And so to make that all happen, you need to do some meaningful touring. You need to do some warm-up dates and like smaller markets and get your feet wet and just get out there and become a band. And it takes a lot. It takes some weeks of rehearsal. And then and the other thing is KXM is really not a proven band. So how are we going to do out on the road? Where are we going to play? Are we going to play little clubs in the time of COVID? I don't think so. Are people going to put us in the Enormo Dome or stadiums? No. So I don't really. There's a lot of obstacles, unfortunately. I don't want to sound negative on your show, but that's just.
No, you're being honest. You're being realistic. Yeah, you're being totally honest about it. I mean, and I appreciate that. And for those that don't know, KXM is George and Doug Pinnick and Ray Luzier, and there's 3 records, and they're killer records, and maybe a 4th coming, and maybe hopefully one day some live shows. Hey, George, I want to talk to you about Seamless and a couple other quick things. But before I do, one final thing on Dokken. You mentioned that, you the comments you saw about yourself playing, and when you saw the video I posted of you guys over the weekend, even in advance of you coming on here, you got to know that there are a lot of people that are critical of Don's performance and his voice these days. Now, I know that he's been through a lot in terms of health, but where do you land on that? And have you had conversations with him about that?
Well, it gets brought up. I mean, he's hyper aware of who he is and what he does and what people think. And here's the bottom line, as far as I'm concerned, from my perspective. The songs are really what people are there to see, and the personalities to a lesser extent, especially Don, of course. He's the vocal guy. He's the lead singer. But, my experience is when I'm on stage with them, the songs are coming off fine. There's nobody with any, it seems with any disapproval out there in the audience. I think everybody's enjoying themselves and into it, and that's why they keep coming back. I mean, how many decades has Don been out there performing, and people keep coming back. So I think they're coming back for the songs, and when you're in your late 60s and these guys getting into their 70s, their voices are not like instruments. They're not like guitars where it's a mechanical device. So voices go away. But we work around it. He sings in a lower register, and the bass player Chris does a great job of trying to hit the higher stuff so that it sounds like as much like the record as possible, and it works. Yeah. And the band's killer, so I think hey, you go see any older band, it's not what they were back in the day, but we're doing the best we can.
Hey, and as long as you keep it real, I'll take anything as long as it's real. I mean, I'd have a much bigger problem personally if he was lip syncing or something, because to me that's inexcusable. So I'll take any drop off as long as it's a real live performance versus fakery.
No
so
tracks,
there's that.
No tracks and no man in the box. There's nobody hiding in the tent backstage. We know bands have done that, And
Robert Mason isn't under the stage.
Yeah, well, under the table, under the stage, under the desk, whatever you want to call it. Hey,
I want to, if you can, George, if you can hold for 2 minutes for me, I got to do a quick break, but I want to come back. I want to talk about your instrumental record, Seamless, because when I hit you up about this, you told me it's been out a little while, which I didn't realize how long it had been out, but I still think people should know about it. Maybe there's some people that don't, and I want to talk about it because it's a really cool instrumental record. So if you can hang with me through a break, I want to come back and talk about that a little.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be here.
All right, cool. I'm going to put you on hold. Bye. All right, we'll put George Lynch on hold right now, and we'll come back right after this short commercial break and get into some more with George, including about his latest release, which is an all-instrumental record called Seamless. More with the great George Lynch right after this on Trunk Nation. All right, George Lynch has been nice enough to give us some time here today on this Tuesday, talking music, talking guitar, talking rock, talking Dokken, and George also has his first ever all-instrumental solo record, which came out recently, called Seamless. George, we talked about just a little while ago your love of Jeff Beck. Was that an inspiration to decide to do an all instrumental record like this?
Well, the main inspiration was the fact that I'd never done one. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm kind of a guy in the guitar world. I that's something I can do. I probably should. I felt somewhat obligated, but also I felt like I needed that challenge, to force myself to stretch a little bit and keep my chops up and give me a reason to, because you can, in being a guitar player, especially for, you play for decades and decades, you get to the point where it's sort of like you get these plateaus where you get sort of used to your playing and you kind of do the same thing over and over again. And it's really hard to break out of those ruts. So I think the best way to do that is just to do something completely different, other than what your normal routine is. So don't warm up the same way. Don't play the same way. Play through whatever. Just change anything you can think of, and it forces your mind to kind of rewire and think in different ways and keeps your playing fresh and fun for you. Because if you're not enthusiastic about what you're doing, that's going to come through your playing. I like to enjoy what I'm playing. I like to get off on and go, oh shit, that was cool, rather than just being a technician, and just like it's data or something, So when I got the offer from the label, which was Rat Pack Records, to do that, I had been working on a Lynch Mob record, and it just wasn't working out. I was writing all these songs, and for as long as I could remember, I'd never had this problem where I kept sending the record and the songs to the rest of the band, and they kept like kicking them back. I'm like, dude, we don't know what to do with this. And I'm like, what, really? I go, yeah, you didn't. This is not Lynch Mob. We don't know what this is, but we don't know what to do with it. And I went through like 4 singers and a bunch of different people, and it just, after months and months of that, I just like, you know what? I wrote the wrong record, and I was ready to shit can it and just say, wow, I'm going to have to just like put this stuff in the trash bin and start all over again. And people came up and said, you know what? Can you instrumentalize it? And first of all, my first instinct was no. I mean, it wasn't built for that. So an instrumental record would have to be built with that in mind from the ground up. But then when he goes, well, you know, just think about it. And over the next few weeks, I started to tinker around with it, because they suggested, you know, just play along with it and see if there's anything that you could do to maybe make that work. And when I started doing that, I actually realized that it would be not only could work, it wouldn't just be a salvage job, it would actually be really interesting, potentially. So I went to work and rolled up my sleeves and just, you know, hit it from that angle. Like, I'm going to reinvent this wheel, and which is a challenge in itself. And I was actually really proud of the results. It's not the same thing as if I would have. I'm thinking about doing another one later this year, and working, you know, just seeing what would happen if I just build an instrumental record from the ground up, you know, like Surfing with the Alien or something, you know, or a Steve Vai record. Just intentionally, this is built to be guitar music. You know, the guitar is
right. Yeah, that's really interesting, and I was going to ask you about that, because I'm always curious when, and I have Vi on the show on Thursday, I've had Satriani on, I've had all these guys that are known for making instrumental records, and I was curious because as a writer, I would imagine it is a different approach when you sit down to write, and it's going to be an all instrumental record versus when you're trying to write with singer, melody, and in mind and all of that. So that's interesting to me, that this was originally intended to be with a full band and with vocals. So it was written that way, but you were able to adapt it. But if you were to do it again from the get-go, you'd probably take a different approach to the writing.
I would. Yeah, because when you're writing or at least when I'm writing for vocals, the way the routine that I have in my writing process, no matter who I'm working with, is there's a certain formula, you know, that you're accommodating the vocals around. So it's, you know, kind of an ABC, bridge, AC out, you know, or whatever. You just, you know, a verse and a pre-chorus and choruses, and they repeat, and then you're in the middle of the song, and you have maybe a bridge, a vocal bridge, maybe a solo, then a breakdown and reintroduction, and then maybe a short verse, and then skip the pre-chorus and a long chorus and end the song. That's the most kind of just stock, you know, arrangement I could think of off the top of my head. And that's basically what most of my songs are when I write them, I think, in those terms. So it's hard for me, well, not hard, but it's a challenge for me to break that mold and think differently, which is what this record forced me to do, the Seamless record. And if I were to write another one, which I intend to from the ground up, meaning write another instrumental record and record it, I would do even more of that, which I'm looking forward to, because it forces me to think outside my own box.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the re-recording. One of the last times I had you on was a few years ago, and at that point you were in the process of doing the re-record of Wicked Sensation. And I know that there was some blowback from fans about you having done that. I've always maintained I don't mind when an artist does that at all, as long as the original version remains in print and remains an option to listen to. So what's your take now in retrospect on doing that? How do you stand behind it, or is it something you wish you didn't do?
From my perspective, it was so much fun, and the results were awesome, and I don't understand why anybody would have a problem with that. Some of the criticism I saw was it was a money grab, which is the craziest thing, because we got paid hardly anything to do it. We just did it just actually really to do it, and because it was fun, and we made a little bit, but I mean, for the amount of work we put into it, it ended up being kind of McDonald's money, really. If you add up all the hours, the amount of money we all ended up getting, it was really nothing. But we worked really hard on it. It was a lot of fun. Brian Tichy ended up really, I would say, I don't know if I really credited him with this, but he was really the producer. and in a huge way. I mean, he was there every bit of the way, went with my guitar parts, offering me direction and ideas and sort of a different perspective, objective opinions about how to approach different sounds and performances and where I should play things. It was really phenomenal. I've never experienced that before with anybody. Usually producers are just kind of there in the room, I'm not sure why. And he was intimately involved in all the bass parts, obviously drumming and other things. So he was phenomenal. And so I guess what I'm saying is if you don't like the record, you need to blame it on Brian Tichy, because it's not my fault. I was against all that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, he was phenomenal. Oh, man, everybody just played their asses off, and I think we did a good job of reinterpreting a lot of the songs. Some of them were just too much the same as the original, I thought, and I don't know why that happened. It's just sometimes, lightning strikes, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think on about half the songs, we reinterpreted them in a really exciting, energetic way. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but I was really shocked when I started getting kind of negative feedback. Not from everybody, but from some people, like you just mentioned. I was just like, well, where that's coming from. I don't quite understand it, because it doesn't take anything away from the original. It's not trying to replace anything. It's just in addition to, if you like it, it's like, hey, if you don't like it, don't buy it. Don't show up. I don't understand why people feel compelled to be openly vicious with their criticism about something. I mean, we're talking about music here, which is just, it's very subjective. But if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. I mean, we're not hurting anybody here.
Right. I mean, if you would have said the original Wicked Sensation is no longer available, never to be heard again, and this is the only new version, then yeah. But when you have the option, it's just a different take on it. I find that stuff really interesting and fascinating.
I'll give you a little nuts and bolts business perspective of this. Or maybe I should be talking about this, but the first record was a $500,000 record in 1989 money, which is $1 million now, or whatever it is. This record that people are complaining about was a $25,000 record. The whole budget was $25,000. That was for the studio, the recording, the mixing, whatever expenses we had. I mean, I kind of look at it like that,
Right.
It's like 1/20th of the budget. With 1/20th of budget, we created that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the $500,000 on the original recording didn't all go to recording. It was the early '90s, after all, wasn't it?
No. Well, recording in quotes, I would say, because in those days, what would happen is all the people around you, the machine that you're forced to build, the producers, the engineers, the studios. I wouldn't say the engineers so much, but the studios definitely, and the producers. They're like divorce lawyers. They know how much money you have in the bank, because it's their job to interface between the label and the band and the talent. So the first thing they look at is, what's the budget? Oh. And then the second thing they think is, how am I going to get the lion's share of that in my pocket?
Right.
And so, and the studios are the same way. A lot of times producer will work in specific studios. They get kickbacks, or they'll own the studios. Like in Keith Olsen's, as an example, he owned the studio, so he insists on using his studio, which he charged an arm and a leg for. We could have went right across the street to Sound City, which is a much, much better studio, for a tenth of the price, but we went to, Goodnight LA, his studio, because that's how we got him as a producer. So what these guys do is they would just say, okay, well, the last person in line here, we're going to make sure there's no money left for the band when this is all said and done. So we spent a lot of money, but unnecessarily, and not on frivolous things, but just on, production costs that were really unnecessary in hindsight, because we can do records now that are, well, I would say arguably in the same ballpark for 1/10 or 1/20th of the money.
Right.
Because we work because we work much more efficiently now, because we're forced to. So back then, we'd wander into the studio, and maybe I'd spend 3 days getting a guitar sound. Dude, nowadays on a record, if I have 3 days, I'll have all the guitars done in 3 days. You know,
right?
I'll get a
right.
guitar sound in 15 minutes. You know, and all that waste of time in the bad old days or good old days was really kind of unnecessary and frivolous.
Yeah.
But, you know, we never thought it would end. So
just in wrapping up here, George, what's the future for you? You're going to continue to do some of these guest spots with Dokken, and then I know you retired the name Lynch Mob, and now you just basically go out and play under your own name. And then the band is kind of who's playing with you when you're doing your own thing is pretty much revolving. I mean, it always was pretty much, but you don't have a really set band anymore, right?
Well, I really haven't since day one of Lynch Mob. It's been a revolving door of members. There's been so many versions of Lynch Mob, I can't even keep track. So yeah, but the interesting thing is though, it's really a lot of times just the same people keep rotating through just at different times. So at this point, I've got Jimmy and Deanna on drums, which we've been playing together off and on for decades. We've got our own stories there that go back, way, way back. Then Andrew Freeman is back on vocals, and I've worked and played with Andrew a lot for the last 20 years or so. And Rob DeLuca's on bass, and he used to play with us in earlier versions of the band. And we've done other things together. Rob DeLuca is the bass player from UFO.
Sebastian Bach, yeah, he's a brilliant, phenomenal band. I mean, Andrew's an incredible singer. Jimmy's a great drummer. Rob's a great bass. I mean, that's a great band right there. So that's your current lineup. Yeah,
and it's George Lynch and the Electric Freedom. And how long this lineup will last is anybody's guess. And I'm not investing myself anymore, setting myself up for disappointment because, change is inevitable. It's just part of life. If you resist it, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment and frustration. So I sort of actually look forward to the changes because it's a different experience. So, as opposed to Dokken, let's say, which is very consistent and conservative, they go out, they play the same thing all the time. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying, but it's a different thing. So it's very consistent. They go out, they play the same set every year, every show. I'm sort of the opposite of that. I'll never play the same thing twice. All my solos are just off the cuff, that night, how I'm feeling. And members are changing, which changes the whole makeup of the band and the flavor and the sound and chemistry. And I think that's something interesting. I would think from an audience perspective, at least some people in the audience would say, I'm going to show up and go see George tonight, and we don't know what's going to happen because this is a different band, and they're going to play different songs, and he's going to play different solos. And our performances are like snowflakes, they're all, no two are the same. So yeah. I'm not saying we're snowflakes. I'm just saying the performance.
And the last thing, and I thought of you when I heard this news, and I was just like, oh my God, George, because first of all, for those that don't know, your I guess son-in-law is Richie Faulkner, the guitarist in Judas Priest. He is doing okay. I mean, seems to have bounced back from this incredibly horrific, scary thing, and getting ready to go out and play. So the reports on him have all been positive, right? He's on the road to recovery. You've been in touch with him?
Oh, of course. I mean, every day, that's my little grandbaby, and I'm FaceTiming him every day and talking to my daughter and talking to Richie. And thank God he dodged the biggest bullet anybody could, be staring down the barrel at. I mean, and he's over the hump. As far as I can tell, he's doing pretty well. I mean, he's there. That's such an insanely traumatic thing for any human being to go through. That for him to be here 4 months later and pretty much back. I don't know. I can't put a percentage on it, but it just seems like he always was now. He's such an incredibly scarily talented guy, and he makes it seem so easy. And he's also very driven and very dedicated and very smart. I mean, the guy is really a contender, and I love him for that. And I also love him because he takes care of my daughter and my grandbaby and gave me a beautiful grandbaby. But he is just a really beautiful artist, and you know, it's funny when we get together because, you know, guitar players are inherently competitive, even on a very friendly basis. When, you know, John and Levin and I are out playing, doing Dokken stuff, I mean, there's definitely competition there, you know, and we're all like that, you know, but it's friendly competition. I mean, you know, we use it as a catalyst, you know, to be better, you know.
Right.
And but with Richie, I mean, I said I watch him play, and I'm just in awe, you know. And I have a name, and I'm a known guy in the guitar world. But I told him, you know, you have entered your legacy has entered the pantheon of the upper echelons of guitar players, and he deserves that. He's scary. I've talked to a number of pro guys that have been on tour with him, and have confided in me that they just, you know, he puts them to bed. I won't want to mention names, but, you know, other guys that scare me have said that about Richie. He's definitely a contender. He's a monster.
And no one would argue. Great person, great player. I know him, phenomenal. But the world was thrown off its axis when the mind-blowing announcement of Judas Priest playing as a single guitar band came out. And they, of course, changed on that because of the blowback. But you were on with me, and you were saying how I want that gig in Priest. I want the set. When they announced for a half a second they were going to be a 4-piece, I'm like, George, you got the in. That's got to be George Lynch over there.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because, you know, we talk about it frequently, and it's been brought up. But I guess they do kind of have you know, parameters they have to work within, and Rob is really, you know, obviously the leader of the band. I mean, he's what he says goes, and understandably. And I guess they have this thing about they really want to preserve Priest as being British, you know, because that's their legacy, and that's kind of, you know, British steel. That's what they're all about. At least the front line. I understand drummer's not, but and I get that. So.
Just put a British accent on, George. You can go do it.
Well, that's what I told him. I told Richie and Mariah the other day. I said, "Hey, I got my 23andMe back, and actually I'm 37% British. I had no idea." Mate, blimey, mate! I just got my 23andMe back. I can adopt the accent. It's pretty good, right? Hello. I don't know. I'll learn some British words.
Oh God, have fish and chips every day and see where it takes you, man.
Yeah. No, you know. So,
well, listen.
I just want to mention before you hang up.
Yeah,
I've never sang on a record before where sang lead, and I think of myself as, you know, this in my own head as a singer, but when I open my mouth, it doesn't happen. You know, I just my throat gets in the way. But on this Seamless record, I did all the vocals.
You know, I was thinking, you know, George, I was thinking that you finally made a solo instrumental record because you got so tired of dealing with singers and gone through so many. Now you just don't have to deal with that anymore.
I love singers. Are you kidding me? I'm just trying to be a singer, but I can't sing, so I play guitar. I love singers, but no, that isn't really the reason why. But someday I will sing. But there is actually a moment on that record where you can hear my voice, where I did sing because of what I was doing was trying to convey something to the engineer, and I was singing it, but he had a mic on the desk, and he captured that, and I went on to do it with the guitar, but he put that back in the record, and that's my voice on the record, and he didn't tell me about that, so it's kind of this spot.
And I'm looking at the credits right now because I have the CD, Guitars and All Vocals by George Lynch. I just picked up on that. That's fantastic.
All vocals, which is one word that he repeated over and over in this one song that's tucked way in the back. But it's pretty funny. I can't remember the name of the song. So,
hey, man, it's always great to...
Technically, I'm not lying when I said I did all the vocals on the
That's true.
Record.
There you go. Man, it's always great to talk to you.
Grammy for best. I might be nominated for a Grammy for Best Vocal on an Instrumental Record.
I got to go, man. It's great to talk to you. Thank you for the time. Hopefully we'll talk again soon. Hopefully I get a chance to see you soon. And everybody check out Seamless out now and look for George out there on the road, either with Dokken or doing his own thing. Take care, man. Thanks again for the time. I appreciate it.
All right, Eddie. Talk to you soon. See you out there.
See ya.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
There he goes, everybody. George Lynch. Always great to talk to George. I got to tell you, he's one of those guys you hear so much about, and you hear so much about the division. He even referenced it, the animosity over the decades between George and Don and George, this and that. I got to tell you, as a guy that's been doing this almost as long as George has, actually longer in terms of recorded history, but no, right around the same time we started. I mean, I've worked with and known and been friends with Don and George for probably 38, 40 years now. I mean, I've got tooth and nail on my wall, one of my first interviews back then. Never have I had anything but positive experiences with both of those guys. Never have they been different than what you just heard. Or even off the air, George is always just, great dude. And Don's always been great too. It's just weird that to me that two guys that there's this huge history of push-pull and fighting and whatever. Again, I'm not in a band with them. I get that. But I've never had anything but positives from both of them together or individually, because we brought them together on that metal show. If you recall, we did an LA Invasion from the Rainbow. They came together and did the interview together with me a couple years ago on this show. Always been great. It's just interesting to you hear all the stuff, and then I don't know what happens behind closed doors. It's just strange. Anyway, thanks to George Lynch.